ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call me international. When me ride palm rhythm and I move, but the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Fatty me on the place, I with the one Jamalski. We are the general. We sit up on the rhythm and over the mic incredible. I'll be right part of the rhythm, move with the rhythm, I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me. You know you love her for your life. Hey. Jump up on the rhythm, make we ride it right. We chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. What they call me international. When me ride palm rhythm and I move with the rhythm and I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Fatty me on the place, I with the one Jamalski.
Yes, yes, yes. What is up, everybody? Let me bring the chat over here. I got the chat box. Who's here? What's everybody up to? Where you coming in from? It's your boy Joshua Casper here with another dev stream with Plugin Boutique. Today is extra special. We got a, let me just see here, the director of plugin development from Eventide. Yeah, that's right. But before we jump into that, I just want to give a couple of announcements. But before I even do that, I just want to know what's going on with everybody. Where are we tuning in from? I got to see Dallas, Texas, Indiana. What else we got? Is that Holland? Nice. India. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Romania. All right, all right. Fort Worth in the house. Love to see it. So yeah, big stream today and a big stream tomorrow. That's my first announcement. We're going to be doing another live stream tomorrow. Same time, same place. That is going to be with Moog. Moog have just released a suite of plugins based on the Moger effects pedals. And I'm going to be joined by Gert Bevan, who is the software engineering manager and software product or production manager as well. And he was actually the lead on the Moger effects plugins effort. And he's really, really involved and hands-on with the entire process. So that is going to be an incredible stream in and of itself to talk about those plugins. But the icing on the cake for that stream, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to be giving away a subharmonicon piece of gear. It is an incredible analog. It's hands-on. It fits. It actually works well with the Mother 32. Trust me. If we can get Johan and Elliot, who are helping me on chat today, if we can get a link to the subharmonicon on Moog's website, you all need to check this out. It's absolutely fantastic. We're going to be giving one of those away as well as some plugins tomorrow. So definitely hit the bell. subscribe, do everything you need to do to stay informed. But it's tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time. We're going to be doing that. And then one more massive announcement. It's a little bit of a secret one. Next Thursday, I'm going to be doing another live stream. This one is going to be late. It's going to start at 8 p.m. And I can't tell you what it's about, but you're all going to absolutely love it. I know there's a little bit of suspense there, but trust me when I say you're going to love it. So that's just another reason to subscribe and hit the bell, because that's going to be intense. So with that, let's talk about today's stream. As I said, we're going to be joined by Tom Longabaugh, who is the Director of Plugin Development at Eventide, where he focuses on product development, UI implementation, and building out Eventide's underlying plugin framework. So on the stream, we're going to be talking about a range of their effects plugins, and I'm going to leave it to him to discuss what those will be. But ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Tom. Tom, how are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Oh, it is going. Things are rolling. Lots of good news right there to start, and now we can have the cake and eat it too, because we're going to be talking about Eventide's incredible effects plugins. Can you, to start, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself outside of the things that I've just briefly mentioned, and then maybe slide into what we're going to be talking about today on stream?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I guess like you said, I'm the Director of Plugin Development at Eventide. I've been at Eventide for, I guess, seven and a half years now. So, I grew up playing music and playing in bands, recording, all kinds of stuff like that, and ended up going to New York University to study music technology and computer science. And yeah, while I was in school there, I kind of got linked up with Eventide through just kind of a cold email, I guess, and I got in touch with Tony Agnello, who's the managing director, and started interning, and then that just sort of led into a full-time job, and just been here working on plugins ever since. So
nice.
I mean, like
a cold
like
email, huh?
Yeah, please give me an internship, that kind of stuff. So it worked out, I guess.
I mean, I would say so. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, like you're kind of mentioning, now mainly what I do is just getting all the pieces of the puzzle to fit in place to get a plugin out the door. So, if we kind of generally start with some R&D that our DSP engineers are working on. They're always on the hunt for like the latest and greatest technology and DSP concepts. And so when they sort of hone in on something that they're excited about, they'll be iterating on that, and then I'll kind of help step in. And this is not just me. We have a small team, and we're kind of all wearing a bunch of hats, but me and the product guys will come in and we'll help them like parameterize the R&D they've been doing and sort of turn it into a rough sketch of a plugin. Then we'll bring in a UI designer and get the product laid out. And then either myself or one of my colleagues will implement the UI, implement all the back-end structure needed to support that and the DSP, and get it all polished up and out the door. So kind of have a hand in the whole process, outside of everything I don't really do any digital signal processing, but everything else I have a hand in, for better and worse, I guess.
Okay, so when you're in charge of putting all the puzzle pieces together, do you still do coding? Are you still heavily involved in that end of it? Or are you just so overwhelmed with all the other things that need to be done in the process?
No, I still do a good bit of coding. So I'd say my time is probably split like 50-50 or 60-40 coding to, wearing the managerial hat, I guess. But, Eventide is I don't know if it appears this way from the outside, but we're a pretty informal, casual kind of office structure. So everyone's kind of doing a bit of everything all the time, and there's not really like much of a hierarchy. We're all kind of doing what we can and what we need to do. So, being a director of something doesn't necessarily, it just means I'm sort of the de facto lead, but I'm not like calling every single shot, right? It's very much a collaborative effort. So
Gotcha. So what I'm going to do, Tom, is just flip over to your desktop, and maybe you can let us know a little bit about the history of Eventide and then what we're going to be going through today on stream.
Yeah, for sure. So what I want to do today is sort of I want to walk everyone through, a few of our plugin offerings, and I kind of want to structure it as like a past, present, future look at Eventide. I'm sure, well, I don't know, maybe people watching aren't familiar with Eventide as a company, but we've been around making pro audio effects since 1971. So the company started out in the basement of a recording studio in New York City, which it was on 54th Street, and funnily enough, it was across the street from Studio 54. So every now and then, I'll get to hear like a story from like one of my colleagues who's been around, like from back then, about some ridiculous thing going on across the street, like someone riding a horse down the middle of 54th Street or something like that. Just craziness.
I want to hear some of those, perhaps after the stream, though.
Yeah. But yeah, so the company today, it's still run by one of the original founders, Richard Factor, and as well as Tony Agnello, who I mentioned earlier. He's the managing director now, and he was the first engineering hire that Eventide made. So, it's super cool that they're still around and heavily involved, and we can pick their brains and hear kind of how they were doing things back in the day, because there were just so many technical limitations that they were really creative about coming up with kind of solutions. So yeah, I mean, Eventide, we got our start from the beginning. We've been a digital audio effects company. So the first product we made was a digital delay line, the DDL 1745. And that was just what it sounds like. It was a digital delay that provided up to 200 milliseconds of delay, which is comically small now, but in 1971, that was like a huge deal to do that.
So this is, when you say digital, just so everybody is clear, it's analog, but digital processing inside of a piece of hardware, right? Or is it in the computer?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So it was a rack unit. So yeah, you'd have analog going in, analog going out, but in the unit, there were hundreds of shift registers that would basically take a little bit of, data and hold it a little bit and then pass it to the next one. And so you could basically delay the audio by just jamming a bunch of shift registers into that unit. So yeah, not running, fully standalone piece of gear where the interface to it was analog. But yeah, so that was used for pre-delays on like plate reverbs, or in some of the like larger like music festivals of that era. If they needed speaker arrays in the crowd where some of the speaker arrays are farther back from the stage, you need to time align the signal as it goes by so that it's not out of phase, right? So you could use these units chained together to like provide that delay. So yeah, we were doing digital stuff from the beginning. There were kind of a bunch of different products of that era, but the first one that kind of made like a big splash was the H910 harmonizer, which was, I think, the first commercially like available pitch shifter. So up until this point, if you wanted to change pitch on your track, you also were changing the time of it, or vice versa. If you wanted to speed up or slow down, the pitch was going to be altered. And so this decoupled those two concepts, which again seems obvious now, but at that point in time, I think 1975 is when this came out. It was like, you literally could never have done this before. So engineers and producers obviously hopped on this and started putting it to use in all kinds of ways. As a special effects unit, the pitch shifting in it is rudimentary by today's standards. So it does sound very robotic when you like shift up or down by quite a bit. But they'd use it for special effects. They would use it to detune and like thicken guitars or snares or whatnot. And yeah, similarly to the DDL 1745 that I just mentioned, this was like a analog in, analog out piece of gear, but digital on the inside. And I kind of mentioned like creative solutions. Tony, he was the designer of this unit. He basically built his own DAC and ADC for this because there wasn't really anything available at the time. So they were really like getting their hands dirty on in every aspect. But yeah, so I mean, I guess I'll go ahead and just start diving in and doing some demos now, so I don't keep boring you with history.
It's not boring at all, man. This is incredibly interesting stuff.
So yeah, we'll get into some sound demos.
We've got some questions coming in about Physion 2 and SplitEQ, but I think I'll hold those because I think you have both of those plugins lined up in terms of demos, so I'll hold those for that time. But everybody keep sending your questions in just at Plugin Boutique, and we're going to get them answered by Tom on stream if we got time for it. So keep sending them in, and Tom, keep cracking away.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I'm absolutely going to touch on SplitEQ and Physion. Those are kind of the focus of the demos I'll do. That's the future part of the presentation that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So yeah, H910, I guess going back to this, it's a relatively simple unit in terms of interface. You have your input level, you change pitch with this manual knob here. This is an octave down, so like half your pitch versus, octave up is twice your pitch. There's kind of these push buttons that you could set delay times with using different combinations of these buttons. There were some different modes for pitch control. So the original unit had this anti-feedback mode where basically this would add like random variations to the pitch. So the idea was if you were like singing live or something like that and there was feedback problems, by like varying the pitch, you'd get like a reduction in modes and counter some of the feedback. We recreated it here in the plugin because it's kind of a cool legacy thing. You would use it for a special effect nowadays maybe, but it doesn't, it just adds this variation. The keyboard functionality is we actually used to ship with a physical keyboard that you could buy and use the keyboard to like play musical notes as you were singing into the unit. So that, go all the way up and down, that range using, C is kind of the center, unison frequency. And then you could also use the envelope of your incoming signal to change the pitch. So one of the first like big uses that this unit kind of gained, I guess the engineers started using it for, like something that engineers latched onto was you could do like a subtle pitch shifting on the left channel and the opposite shift on the right channel. So nowadays we know this as like a micro pitch effect or like a stereo widening effect. And so we actually have here, I'm going to switch to our H910 dual harmonizer plugin. So this one here is representing that technique, right? So we have two units, top and bottom, top units for your left channel, bottom units for your right channel. And you can actually go ahead and link them at the bottom here with these stereo link buttons. So if I turn that on, changing parameter on the top or bottom will link between the two. And if I turn on reverse link, that means that everything is still linked, but now the manual controls go opposite directions. So I can set opposite shifts for the left and right channel. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and set this up and get a nice stereo widening effect, maybe add a bit of delay for like a little slapback, and then just mix in the dry signal so we can hear what that sounds like. So I guess I'll go ahead and just start with mix at 0 so we can just hear the signal or the guitar I'm going to play through it. So yeah, got a lead line there. Sounds good, but if we want to thicken it up, we can go ahead and add the H910 to it here. So turning up that mix control, I'm going to do a slight spread on the left and right in terms of pitch. So you can hear that's nice and wide now. And I'm going to go ahead and mix back in the dry signal, starting at 0 mix and just bring in that micro pitch effect. So yeah, you can hear that thickens the signal up quite a bit. I like doing it with this unit just because it has kind of like that really like vintage vibe and character to it. Even though this unit was digital, it was still really early days. So it's kind of like, I mean, it is digital, but it's as close to analog as you could be while being digital, I guess, is just a layman's way of putting it. But
would you say that plugin is most will benefit from a monophonic signal, i.e., a guitar lead or a vocal or things of that nature?
Yeah, it definitely will work best on like a monophonic signal. There's no like intelligent like diatonic shifting or polyphonic input or anything like that. It's definitely best on a monophonic track like a guitar or vocal. And
the pitch ratio, you said, fluctuates as it did in the original to create creative results? Is that what you said?
Yeah, so in that anti-feedback mode I mentioned, it does this fluctuation. You will notice on the displays here, they're kind of flickering back and forth.
That's my question. What's going on with that?
Yeah, so that is basically the crystal in the clock. So the clock that's driving the digital processing in here was kind of unstable, so it would jitter a bit, and that jitter would cause the slight fluctuation. So yeah, you would you tune it to whatever you want. You can see it kind of flashing back and forth, and that basically it adds this little bit of randomization that definitely gives the unit like its kind of signature sound. So.
Nice. Just a quick question from Remy Music. We're already into essentially 2 plugins. It's maybe 1 iteration or 2 iterations of the same plugin, but and it's based on an actual rack effect. Remy is wondering if you at Eventide have plans, and I know these are always questions that come in about future things, and no one's ever going to answer them. But maybe if you could just field the question as best you can, if you have sort of plans to make a digital rack where you can have all of the Eventide plugins and switch the signal chain or things of that nature, something like similar to maybe what Sound Toys has.
Yeah,
is that something in the works, or obviously you can't tell us, but
well, I can tell you that it's not currently in the works.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to say never, but it's not on the current roadmap right now.
How many effects plugins does Eventide have available at this moment? Do you know?
At this moment, yeah. I think in total it's at 33 currently.
Jeez.
Yeah.
And how many hardware units does Eventide have?
You mean models of the hardware?
Yeah.
So it's going to be. So you have I think it's going to be 8, I believe. We have the H910 single and dual. I mean, I guess it depends on if you count those as separate plugins or kind of variations on the same. But yeah, there's the H910 single and dual. There's the H949 single and dual, which I'll show in a second. SB 2016 reverb, which I'll also show in a second. We have the instant phaser, instant flanger, and then a few H3000 models. And the omnipressor. So, yeah, whatever that adds up to. I guess I think that was 8, but maybe I'm not counting right on the spot.
It'll be all right. People in the chat will let us know.
They'll let me know that I suck at doing math. Yeah.
the engineer. I'm trying to see if there's any question about the H910. Dantmax is saying that some say that when using the musical note interval presets, it gets slightly off grid. Is that really the case?
Musical note presets get slightly off the grid.
Yeah, musical note interval presets.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not aware of it going slightly off the grid. I assume they mean not perfectly in tune with the interval they want to hear. If that is the case, it's something we need to look into, but as far as I'm aware, that's not an issue. It should be, those presets should match whatever the interval is.
All right.
You will notice that, certain intervals are going to sound better than others, and that's just due to the kind of like rudimentary nature of the like autocorrelation going on and how it's shifting. So more perfect intervals are going to sound better than non-perfect intervals.
All right. Well, I hope that answers the question. By all means, continue the presentation.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm just going to quickly jump now to the H949, which was, as you can probably guess, the sort of next iteration we did on this harmonizer series. So you can see it's pretty much the same in terms of kind of basic layout as the H910. We have input level, we have a feedback section. Now that feedback section has EQ in it. Again, we have this pitch ratio. But the cool thing about this unit is that it actually added some additional modes. So it's kind of like an early multi-effects in the most basic sense. We have a standard pitch change here from an octave up. It actually went 2 octaves down in the H949. There's an extend mode, which basically takes the sort of additional output delay. So the H949 has like a main out that's going through the pitch shifting section, and then there's just a standard delay output. And so it can basically steal the delay only output and steal that sort of the buffering that's going on for that and use that for the pitch shifting. And it can sometimes yield better results depending on your source material. There's also actually dedicated micro pitch modes on this, which is cool. So, there's always this like symbiosis going on between gear manufacturers and engineers or musicians in the field, and kind of like hearing what they're using the unit for and what they like about it. And so Tony and Richard heard like, oh, micro pitch is getting used a lot on the H910. Like, let's build a dedicated mode. So, if you have it in this mode here, you basically can control in much finer grain detail the amount of shift you're getting there. There's also these delay modes where you can just have a standard delay. Pitch doesn't do anything in this case. There's a random mode, which I'm going to show off in a second here. This was kind of like a simulated double tracking thing where basically it would shift it would have these sort of delay amounts that it would shift between like 0 milliseconds and 25 milliseconds of delay and kind of jump around, and that would sort of mimic multiple voices going on. And as that delay time changes, obviously the pitch changes, so you'd get kind of natural out of tuneness like you would hear in a double track performance. And then there's also a flanger built in and a reverse delay, which is capturing grains of audio and playing them back in reverse. So kind of a really early kind of granular effect there.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this unit kind of packs a lot of punch into it for being in the late 70s. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly show the random use because I think it's also cool on guitars. And then I'm also going to bring in a reverb on top of that later. But yeah, just so we can hear it, I'll just go ahead and set up this random mode. So changing the manual knob here is actually changing how fast it's basically changing how fast the delay can switch from the upper to lower limit. So it changes the amount of pitch alteration essentially. So yeah, go ahead and just fade this in here. So you got the track queued up. get a nice little chorused, randomized, slightly micro pitchy sounding effect there. And then we have our SB 2016 plugin, which this came out in the early 80s, the SB 2016 effects processor. That was really like the first multi-effects unit that we did, and I think maybe that was out on the market in 1982. It had reverbs, it had delays, it had modulation, it had like special effects like a time scrambler, which was just like chopping your audio up into a bunch of different places, like actual granular synthesis, right? But the reverbs were what this was really known for, and it has this pretty cool, unique position control where you can basically change as if you're listening from in the front of the room, right, or like right next to the performer versus the rear of the room. So that's really cool. If you have it on a bus, for instance, and you feel like, oh, this is a little too, diffuse or wet, like you can dial the position back, and it's kind of this really intuitive control for like getting just the amount of ambiance or depth you want.
I would love to hear that in action.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and run it 100% wet here so you can see what the position controls do, and then I could dial it back if we want. But yeah, so here's at the front, and then I'll just push it back to the rear. You know what? I'll go ahead and turn the H949 off too, so we can really hear what this does. So, now it's at the rear of the room versus the front. So yeah, that's really nice when you're using something on a bus, or when you're using SB 2016 reverb on a bus, rather. You can kind of use it to like dial in just the perfect amount you want. Or if you have it as an insert, maybe have your mix down lower, and like a technique that that engineers have told us that they love is just sort of dialing that position control in like just to where they can hear it. And that's kind of like the perfect amount. So I'll just go ahead and do that now. So yeah, just kind of getting just the tiniest bit of ambiance and depth to things.
Michael Hopkins, that kind of cutting out is not the plugin. That's definitely going to be a stream thing. It's just a few glitches dropping out of the audio. Don't worry, it's not ruining anything. So with the tip that you've just given us, which is a really cool tip to know, would you use that even if you have a longer decay on it?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Okay, I didn't know if you were looking just to create a small kind of what would you call it? Intimate space. It definitely worked there with what you were doing, but I'm just curious if you had a longer delay, if that sort of tip would still work.
Yeah, it still holds. I can crank up a time now and try it out.
I like it.
That still totally works. Yeah, I think too. Obviously, I'm not running a full mix here, but it's really helpful in a full mix when you're adding your reverb and you're just like, oh, it's a little too muddy, or it's a little too, it's just a little too much. We find that this reverb sits really nicely in mixes. It's like a great mixing reverb. So
no, it sounds a lot like a real space as opposed to a digital reverb. And I think that little like secret tip you've just shared there is great. But I know that all reverbs don't have a position slider on it. So I guess that's another reason to go ahead and grab the SB 2016, man. That's great.
Yeah. I've definitely seen it in other reverbs now, but it is super powerful. One kind of top engineer, I think he told us he calls it like the money knob or the money slider or something, because he like loves going to that as the kind of like, oh yeah, that's how I get it sitting just right.
Yeah. I mean, you sold it. I mean, 100%. I am truly impressed, which doesn't happen often. But yeah, I like what you did and how you that position, the money spot is great. Just when you hear it start to come in, it really did sound like the best position rather than not at all or totally washed out. So
yeah, it's very cool, and yeah, I mean it sounds remarkably realistic for being an algorithmic reverb, right? So and there's multiple types in here too. You can use a room. There's also vintage and modern varieties of those. Plate as well. So yeah, it's a cool, very cool reverb plugin. And the hardware was kind of a favorite amongst engineers, but there weren't a ton of hardware units made. So it's cool that we now have it in a plugin. You can anyone can get access to it. So yeah, I guess I want to now sort of blast into the present day. So I'm not just doing too much of a history lesson here. So I just want to quickly show Blackhole, which is kind of one of our modern day. This is probably our most popular reverb.
Yep. I was gonna say fan favorite right there, community
fan favorite reverb.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly show what this sounds like. I think maybe people watching know what the sound kind of already is. But yeah, Blackhole this came out of. So I guess I'm now jumping from the 80s to like modern day, right? But basically, Blackhole started as an algorithm in I think it was the DSP 4000, which was, we kind of, Eventide has always iterated on these rack effects, right? Our most recent being the H910, but we had the H3000, we had the DSP 4000, the H8000. So Blackhole started in these rack units and then made its way to our Stomp Box line in the mid-2000s. We said, okay, we're going to do guitar pedals now and move all of our studio quality effects onto the guitar pedal platform. So we had our Space Reverb pedal that has Blackhole on it. And we have our H9 Stomp Box, which also has the Blackhole algorithm on it. And then we have the plugin, which is that same algorithm. I guess now we also have the .9 Blackhole, which is like just a dedicated Blackhole pedal. So we're kind of in a cool and unique spot where we can just basically, we can port our effects across all these platforms. We've like set ourselves up in like a technical like tool chain type of way to do that. So we can write all of our DSP code once and then use it across our products, which is really, really dope. So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and show how this sounds. Blackhole's like a very otherworldly, like cosmically sized reverb, great for special effects or ambient music. So here's the dry piano, and then I'll just go ahead and fade Blackhole in. Yeah, so, as you can hear, it excels at very long-tailed reverbs.
Lush, I would use the word lush.
Lush is the word you want, yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward as far as parameters and setting it up and all that. The only kind of unique thing is we've called decay is gravity here. So
well, I think the band is pretty unique as well.
Sorry? Oh, the ribbon control at the bottom. Yeah, that is definitely unique. This kind of comes out of the guitar pedal line of things where you want to control multiple parameters at once. It's definitely useful in a plugin context too, where it's like maybe I want, I guess maybe at the end of this, let's say I want just a massive like infinite decay or something like that going. I could set this up by what you do is you click the button on either side here. And then you turn knobs to whatever position you want for that mapping, right? So I could turn gravity all the way up. I could turn mix all the way up. I could turn feedback near all the way up. And then when I move this ribbon, all these parameters are going together. So just to sort of show that, I guess I can do this here. Freeze it if I want to and just let it sit there decaying until the end of time. So yeah, so the ribbon control I think is actually overlooked a lot in these plugins as a really powerful performance tool, or if you just want, instead of like writing automation at once for a bunch of, or writing automation individually for a bunch of parameters, just like I want to just turn the knob on my control surface and like morph it and perform that automation. It's really handy for that.
It's a great plugin. I have it every time I have to install new plugins on a new computer. It is on the list of plugins that get reinstalled first. It's great. It's absolutely phenomenal. I've got a question.
Yeah.
Let me just see. Aaron Brito is wondering, is there a difference in the reverb algorithms between Blackhole and Shimmerverb if you subtract the pitch, shifting, etc.?
Yeah, there are differences for sure. You can get pretty similar sounds, but they are a bit different. So
okay, if I could just jump in real quick, I forgot, Tom, in the beginning to let people know that we're going to be giving away a few Eventide plugins. Completely skipped my mind, so I'm just going to make that announcement here right now. That's on me. I forgot. But to be entered to win in the giveaway, it's just like all the other giveaways. All you need to do is be positive in the chat, asking questions, answering questions you have answers for, and just all around just being a good person in the chat, and you'll be entered to win. And we'll choose a few people at the end of the stream and get you some free Eventide plugins, courtesy of Eventide. So thank you for that, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, I mean, I would say, how is Blackhole? And I'll tell you, Tom, you're actually running through a bunch of plugins today. I think we're already on like number 4 or 5. But just a question that's gonna come up on literally every one of them is the CPU issue. So perhaps maybe we can just field those, or at least Blackhole now. I know that Reverb DSP is just notoriously heavy. How do you find Blackhole performs with modern CPUs?
I think it performs quite well. I mean, it's not the lightest reverb you'll ever use, but it's certainly not the heaviest. Yeah, I think it's pretty middle of the road. I slap all kinds of instances of it all over tracks I make, and have never run into an issue. So
nice.
Yeah, it's not like a total CPU hog like some reverb plugins can be.
Okay. Another couple of questions that we can perhaps just get out of the way now. Everybody's going to want to know about M1 support.
Yep. We're fully M1 compatible. I think have been for a year or so. So
love to hear it. And then another question, and let me see if I can find the name of the person who asked. If I can't, they'll be upset. Aaron Brito again. Another good question is there in the future any plans to make Eventide plugins resizable?
Yes, there are plans. So
love to hear it. You heard it here first, everybody. Plugin Boutique, dev.stream exclusive.
Big exclusive, yeah. That is it's on the roadmap and being worked on. So
love to hear it.
It's coming.
There's one other question that has been just making its paces through the chat today, and that is iLok. People in general, this isn't really a question. It's not something that you can probably touch on, but just in general, I suppose, me being the surrogate for the chat today, people don't like iLok. It's
under yeah. So it's a common complaint for sure.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a question that's coming in. You can stop asking everybody about iLok or making your comments about iLok. It is what it is. But I had to bring it up. Now that's out, we're good to go.
Yeah. And I totally understand the hesitation and like frustration with iLok. My feeling or experience with it, using, I have an iLok myself and use it for other plugins that are not ours. We offer the machine activation as an option, so you don't need to have a dongle that you carry around with you everywhere. You can just have an account, and sign in with that. I know that still people have hesitations about that, but generally I think iLok is pretty stable and easy to use these days. And
yeah, I think they got I think they even have a cloud thing now where like, so for a while there was the dongle thing, which was never a good idea. But then they did the per machine activation, but I'm pretty sure you can do it to your iLok cloud account. So if you sign into iLok on any computer, you'll have access and be able to use your plugins as well. So it is improving. But
yeah. I mean, and we definitely hear we get a lot of complaints and comments on this directly from customers as well, and we certainly are listening to them. So
cool. Okay, well, what's up next, Tom?
Cool. Well, I think now let's just go ahead and jump into the SplitEQ and Fission. I think these are, I guess we've already gone in 45 minutes, and I'm only now touching on them. But these are kind of what I think maybe people want to hear about. So yeah, I guess just a quick background on these plugins here is these are what we call structural effects plugins. Let's see if I can get both of these up side by side.
I think Fission is resizable, isn't it? Those are both Fission, resizable, aren't they?
These are both resizable. So all of our new plugins, SplitEQ Forward, which I guess is these two, they are resizable. And we plan to make all of our plugins resizable going forward. We are also working on making all of our other plugins in the catalog resizable. So
nice.
We hope to we plan to offer that in the future. It just takes quite a bit of time to kind of get that all happening in a way that always looks nice at each size and everything. So
nice.
Yeah. So these are resizable. So maybe I can actually squeeze. I think this is as small as SplitEQ will go. Let's see here. Yeah. All right. Well, I can kind of almost squeeze these in here, but so SplitEQ and Fission are the two plugins currently in kind of what we're calling our structural effects series. So both of these are based on top of our structural split technology, which is some technology we started working on and developing back in like 2016 I think 2016, maybe even 2015. But what it does is essentially it's kind of what you can infer here is that we're separating incoming audio into its transient and tonal portions of that audio stream. So I'll go ahead and just pull up the onboarding welcome screen to SplitEQ because I think it does a good job of explaining this. So yeah, essentially we are considering transients to be rapidly changing parts of a signal, and we're considering remaining sustaining elements to be tonal. So the process we've come up with is it's not level dependent, it's not dynamics based. It's this algorithm where we're looking basically at the audio signal in time and frequency. So it's not just a time-based thing or a frequency-based thing. It's this kind of custom blend of the two. And so we basically, how it works is we look for kind of stable repeating elements of the signal, classify those as tonal, and then we subtract them out from the full signal, and what remains is the transient. So what's really cool about this process is it's fully complementary, which is to say, if I separate the transient and the tonal, and then I process them the exact same way, and then put them back together, it'll just sound like you had never done the split at all. So the split is basically the transient and the tonal are kind of like a yin and yang kind of thing. They're always opposite of each other, right? So yeah, it's a really cool kind of technical achievement, I guess, but the question is obviously, why would I ever want to do this when mixing? So what we've found is that in effects processing, and especially, I guess I'll focus on SplitEQ for a second here. When you're EQing something, you're generally the goal is I want to fix this thing specifically, but I don't want to also affect these other things, right? So the example we give here in the onboarding, because I think it's a very like powerful one is like, let's say like, you know, I want to increase the punch or thud of a kick drum, let's say. Like, you know, maybe you do a boost on the low mids, but when you do that, it's just gonna like also bring up all the boom of that kick drum, and suddenly you've got a boomier kick drum, which is maybe not what you want. So basically, you know, transients, we can classify those as like strikes or punch or thud, or clicks, pops, attacks. You know, you can read the whole word cloud down here, right? Tonal is kind of the opposite of that. Body, vowel, sustain, harmonics, pitch, material, sheen, that kind of stuff. So if you separate that kind of, you know, thud from the boom, you can just affect them separately, and it's a much more kind of transparent way of handling those things. So yeah, you know, we kind of, as what typically happens at Eventide, we kind of go down a DSP rabbit hole because we think that some particular technique or technology that we've stumbled upon is really cool, and then later we're like, all right, what is this? Like, why are we using this? You know, which is kind of the case here. So we started working on SplitEQ and found that, wow, it's actually really useful for a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just chug through a few examples here. I think it's better to hear rather than me explaining it. So I think let's go ahead and we will start with this vocal bus that I have. So SplitEQ, the way the UI is laid out, you know, I mentioned that if we're processing transient and tonal the same way, then it's effectively like there's no split going on at all. So I can use this like a normal EQ, right? If I'm just moving these gray handles around, this is just going to sound like a regular EQ. And it's only when I say, hey, I want to actually focus on, like, let's say the transient region here, I can then split these handles, and now I'm EQing them separately, right? And this sort of white kind of both paradigm, white or gray for both, and then green for transient, blue for tonal, that kind of paradigm permeates this UI. It permeates the Physion UI as well. You'll see down here in the band editors, I can drag these gray handles to move both at once, or I can decide to just do one or the other. Yeah, so that's kind of the basic use case. You just use it like normally EQ until you're like, okay, I got this problem I really want to isolate on, or, you know, hone in on, right? So yeah, the first thing you're going to want to do when you open up SplitEQ and start using it, same goes for Physion, is generally it's best to set up this split first, just to get like the optimal split for whatever signal you have. That's done here in SplitEQ down at the bottom in this split section. So the first thing you always want to do is like set the source. So these are kind of like heuristically tuned selections that, you know, we've gone through, and you know, this is driving like a bunch of parameters under the hood, right? That are you know, we've kind of optimized them for these different instrument types here. So this is not like an auto detect thing. It's like you actually need to go in and tell it, here's what I'm doing, here's what I'm feeding you. You don't have to follow these rules. You can get cool and good results by, you know, by choosing the wrong thing, or generally like full mix, or you can always use general. Those are good starting places. But generally you want to say, like, you want to favor, you know, your, you know, selections that are like polyphonic. If you're using polyphonic material versus monophonic material, you want a source that's more monophonic, or percussive versus non-percussive. So I have a vocal here. I'm going to go ahead and select vocal. I'll just go ahead and play this vocal now so that we can hear it and know what we're talking about before I get into the rest of it.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign. Unfit to resist, talking me outside my mind.
All right, so that's the vocal. As we can hear, there's like a lot of sibilance in it. It's got a little mud in it, and yeah, we actually, so for SplitEQ, when we were developing it, we like purposely went and recorded a bunch of stuff like purposely wrong or badly because we were finding like something that I think engineers have to deal with quite a bit is just like material they get that's not recorded optimally, especially now with like bedroom recording being such a thing. Like even top 40 recordings, there's sometimes the engineers are getting things that were recorded in the artist's, bedroom studio and they don't necessarily know good mic technique or how to set something up properly. So we kind of tried to intentionally recreate that here. Yeah, so what I'm going to do is I want to isolate the sibilants here.
Hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Can you slide the UI just over to the left? Yeah,
sure.
Perfect. Yep.
So what I'm going to do here is I want to capture some of that sibilance in the transient. That's going to show up in the transient side, and just kind of get all that mouth noise and stuff going in the transient channel. So, like I said, the splitting process is complementary. So in order to hear what's going on, we have to solo transient or solo tonal. Otherwise, if we move these parameters down here, we won't hear anything because it's it fully sums back together, right? So I'll go ahead and select vocal. I'm going to solo transient. I can do that either up here or for convenience, you can do it down here in this bar. And yeah, I'm going to play with separation, decay, and smoothing. So just a quick, what are these, I guess, is separation. We have tooltips throughout the plugin that explain this, but essentially this is isolating transients across the spectrum. So at higher levels, basically the transient regions are going to be smaller and have sharper boundaries. So the transients are going to be more distinct and filtered more sharply from tonal elements. And then smoothing, when we do this process, we're kind of like breaking the laws of physics in a way. So there's going to be artifacts that you hear. So if you're processing transient and tonal really differently in your EQ curves, you might want to turn smoothing up to sort of remove some artifacts. Decay is kind of an extension of smoothing where we're basically kind of limiting how or limiting how fast a piece of transient material can go to be tonal. So this is kind of just sort of like artifact taming, right? There are definitely artifacts that you'll hear when I have transient or tonal soloed. But like I said, once we listen to the full signal again, those will go away or be at a level where you can't really hear anything because the signals are being put back together. So, all right, let's go ahead and tune this now. I've talked enough for the moment.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign. Unfit to resist, talking me outside my mind.
Could you give us a little bit of a boost on the master just so we can really hear it? It's a little bit quiet.
Yeah, you got it.
That should be enough, yeah.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign.
Is that better there?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, so you can hear I kind of got the mouth noise, like sibilance, the plosives kind of filtered into that transient channel. And then what that leaves in the tonal channel is sort of something devoid of that, right?
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign.
All right, so now what I can do is actually target that sibilance in the transient channel, right? So what I can do is grab a band here, and I can solo the band actually to hear what I'm targeting. So I know I'm going to want to target the transient, so I can separate those now. And then by doing a command option click, I can solo just the transient for that band. I could also do this down here in this band editor. I could switch between soloing transient or both or tonal. So yeah, let's go ahead and find those areas of sibilance and plosives.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign. Unfit to resist, talking me outside.
Cool. So kind of narrowed in on some of that sibilance there. Do one more band here.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign.
One other thing that I want to just point out is when you're doing these split curves in SplitEQ, you'll probably find in general that you need to like cut or boost a lot more than you would in a standard EQ, which I know is obviously like if you're doing these huge cuts or boosts, usually as an engineer, you're like, this is wrong. Like I shouldn't need to do these insane cuts or whatnot. But since the signal's being split in half, right, before, or, I mean, not even half, it's like anywhere from 100% transient to 0% transient, right? But since you're not getting the full sonic energy through the plugin, all you're going to end up with, just less sonic energy in transient or tonal. So, yeah, so you might need cuts or boosts that are more extreme than you might think is normal. So. All right, so let's go ahead and listen to it now that I've cut the sibilance and mouth noise out a bit.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign. Unfit to resist, talking me outside my mind.
All right, so tame that down a bit. Probably want to go up slightly on that. We could also remove some mud, which will show up in the tonal portion of the track.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign.
One other thing I want to point out, just as a cool kind of, you can actually use it to help you, but it's just kind of a cool observation, is that in the spectrum analyzer, we have a spectrum. We can see the transient and the tonal spectrum. You can also switch those to be pre or post, or just show transient or tonal or the full signal. But what's kind of interesting is you can see like more of a full spectrum transient signal, and then like on a vocal or pitched instruments, you'll see like the partials and harmonics in the tonal channel. So if you just watch the vocal here,
minds thinking alike are not always a sign.
you'll see like that transient decay, and then like the tonal bits still have those partials. So that can be helpful for like isolating specific areas there.
So can I ask you a question, Tom? What is the benefit over de-essing this way as opposed to the traditional way?
Yeah. So the benefit this way is that, I mean, even with de-essing, right, you're basically compressing, like you're adding a compressor to the entire signal at whatever frequency it's being triggered at, right? So you're not just like you're ducking sibilance, but you're also ducking whatever other frequency content is there along with it throughout, right? So the separation is just a more transparent way of doing it. I mean, you can certainly get similar results with a de-esser, but we find the benefits here are it's more transparent, and it's also faster. You know, you're not playing around with like attack time and release time and whatever else you need to do. It's just kind of like, all right, couple curves done. And so, yeah, I mean, overall, SplitEQ, a lot of what it does, you could achieve with other techniques, but yeah, we just think the workflow is just simpler. We think with SplitEQ, it's kind of more directly targeting what you want to do. So, I mean, another cool benefit of this is I can like boost back, you know, if I want to get some air back on the vocals, right, I can do a tonal shelf at the same frequency, and it won't be bringing back sibilance, right? So if I just show this here.
Minds thinking alike are not always a sign. Unfit to resist, talking me outside my mind.
So you can add back some air and sheen onto that vocal without bringing up like, you know, kind of harsh transient or mouth noises.
Jeweler the Rocket is wondering if there's a dynamic function inside of SplitEQ.
I'm guessing that means dynamic bands.
Yeah.
There's not. It's definitely a commonly requested feature, and something we're mulling over. I don't want to commit to saying we will have it someday. But yeah, it's definitely a possibility. We do find that doing this split before the EQ kind of serves a similar purpose to dynamic bands. In the sense that like you're using a dynamic EQ when you want to only target a certain frequency when it like really is happening, right? And here, by separating into transient and tonal, you can just say like, all right, I just only want to be, targeting this problematic region in the transient or tonal channel. So it is kind of a similar, it's like a different approach to the same problem in a way. But it is something we want to play around with dynamic bands.
Good to know.
Any other questions from the chat or anything before I move on? Are we doing okay on time? Should I speed it up, slow it down?
I mean, I'd say keep cracking away. I think more audio examples, the better on these things.
Cool.
Also, I mean, there's a lot of questions I'm getting about very specific. People are asking if you can show this or show that in a very specific piece of audio. I'm just going to have to let those ones go.
Okay.
It does Eventide allow trials or demos of the plugins?
Yeah, we do. We have a fully featured 30-day demo. So
definitely check it out then.
Yeah, any specific examples you want to try out, definitely say just download the demo and give it a spin. So.
Yeah, I did a pretty lengthy, in-depth video on SplitEQ when it first came out as well, which we've posted in the chat for anyone looking to get a little bit deeper. But yeah, man, if you wanna maybe bring up Physion, we'll see.
Yeah, let's do it. So Physion is similar concept to SplitEQ, but rather than applying equalization to transient or tonal regions of the signal, we're applying effects.
So would you say? I mean, they are very similar. Would you say maybe SplitEQ is more for the mixing and mastering type of personality, and this is more for the creative type, or is that not quite right to say?
I think I would say like at a glance or at surface level, yes. Like Physion, I think does lend itself very well to creative uses and production uses, whereas SplitEQ is a bit more targeted at mixing. But that said, one thing I didn't even show off in SplitEQ, maybe I can get back to it later, is there's this pan tab on here, so you can actually pan each band, the transient or the tonal. So that has some really obviously creative applications where you can like put all of your smooth tonal elements in the center of your mix and put all the transients on the outside. So you can definitely do creative stuff. Another thing that SplitEQ is really good for is if you have like a 2-track sample. That was an example I had queued up that maybe we can get to after looking at Physion a bit. But
well, if you want to do it now, man, I mean, by all means. We want to hear this thing in action. So don't let me rush you. If you had more to show,
no. I mean,
by all means.
I'm happy to jump around, but one thing that's cool or maybe a slightly more creative or production use of SplitEQ is just using it to kind of process like a 2-track that you might get, or a file or a sample, right? Where you're like, I want to do this to it, but it's kind of tricky, and I obviously don't have access to the stems, so I'm kind of stuck. So what this can be good for?
Slide the UI over a little bit to the left.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All good.
So SplitEQ can also be good with, so it can isolate these very small specific transient regions, right? But it can also do kind of a larger scale separation in a way. Like what we found is like if you tweak these decay parameters in the right way in conjunction with the separation, you can kind of isolate like bass out of a mix, or you can kind of like get it tuned to the point where like drums fall into transient and everything else falls into tonal. It's not a perfect split, but it's really helpful for processing these kind of 2-track samples, things like that. So I guess I'll just go ahead.
You had an audio example of that?
Yep.
Awesome.
I will pull that up. I think we're flat here, so this should just maybe got to turn off Physion. Yeah. So all right. So I'll go ahead and just play this here. All right, so yeah, I have a little beat here. It's got drums, it's got a little synth bass, and it's got some kind of synthy chordal elements and arpeggios and whatever. So maybe something I want to do in here is pull the bass out, right? So what I could do is go ahead and I'm probably going to want full mix for this since it's kind of a full mix. I'm going to go ahead and tune transient and tonal in a way that to try and get as much of the drums as possible into the transient channel. All right, so now what I can go ahead and do is use a low cut here to remove the bass. So if that was something I wanted to do without the split, I just have to do a whole cut, right? So that would just take the kick out as well. Right, so I just lose the whole kick. So what I can do now is just pull out the tonal part and just remove the bass here. Right, so the kick's still coming through, but the bass is like heavily reduced, right?
What if can you just do something for me? What if you completely cut the transients now? Would we just get those kind of like spooky synth sounds?
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. Here's tonal only. I guess I can turn off this filter so you can hear it. So, it's not perfect, but yeah, you can get most of that tailored. And obviously I could do all kinds of EQ moves here that I don't have time to go through to like really hone in that stuff, right? But we've definitely found this helpful for, if you're kind of processing these two tracks. I did mention the panning. I guess I can quickly show that. One thing that's kind of cool is like I have a full mix here, but I can actually pan the hi-hat around because it's in the transient channel. So if I go ahead and isolate it here, right, I can go ahead and just kind of so I can actually be changing the spatialization of certain elements in like a full mix or a sample, right? And that's also cool if you have like a mono like drum track that you want to spatialize slightly, or overheads where maybe your kick drum is kind of pulling to the left and you want it up the middle, so you can use this panning in conjunction with the split to kind of like move instruments around, and it's just equal pan laws on the filters, so you're not getting, there's no like weird phasiness coming out of that, since it's just panning certain elements in this for each band.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So.
It's really cool. I mean, you're essentially yeah, I think in my video I did something very similar, which was like you can repan or change the pan of certain elements in the track after it's already been mixed. I think it's really, it's phenomenal. It's really cool technology.
Yeah, when we first kind of did this several years ago, in the office, we were like, whoa, that's wild. And there was even like, I don't remember, maybe it was your video. I don't remember whose it was. There was one video I saw right when we launched that like they did a panning thing, and like my jaw actually opened because I like hadn't heard it done that well before, and it was just like, wow, I didn't even know this did it that well.
It might, not to toot my own horn, I think it might have been mine because Eventide ended up putting mine in their newsletter.
Oh, okay. It probably was yours then. Yeah.
Let's get a link to that. Let's get a link to that in the chat.
Yeah, I just remember being like, I mean, that's what's cool about developing this stuff is like, you know, obviously we have guys in house who do, you know, they mix a bunch of stuff and they're kind of power users and everything, but like, you know, like my audio engineering chops are certainly not those of a professional. So when I hear someone just like do something like that, I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like, all right, how can I work off that? You know, like that's kind of what I was saying about that, like symbiosis in the beginning with the H949 and the micro pitch is like seeing what people do and then like letting that filter back into decisions we make.
That's we do these dev streams quite often, and that's a very common thread throughout them all is seeing the unexpected uses of the product. I mean, there's a clear aim, a clear goal, it's executed flawlessly, but once you put it out there, I mean, there's always just people doing crazy things, and it's really remarkable to just, people are awesome. People are awesome.
Yeah.
You know, you're allowing people to be awesome. So I think it's, as you said, like this sort of symbiosis of everybody just feeding off one another and pushing the boundaries of what's possible. I think it's absolutely wonderful. And with that, there was a question from someone named Rosmus, and it's, who is the DSP, quote, champ, end quote, at Eventide responsible for coming up with the transient tonal split? And this person would love it if there is a publication or research paper somewhere online that they can check out to learn more.
For sure. So I mean, I think there's several champs. There's my colleague Russ, who's his title is the Director of Signal Processing, so he's the DSP, which is pretty funny. But him in conjunction with another guy, Corey, and a former employee who now he actually does Newfangled Audio now, Dan. They were kind of the three guys who were working on this. And there's a patent out that you can read through. I think it came out. I think we put that out 2017. So that's probably your best like technical, you know, if you really want to know how it works, read the patent, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, they were wondering if there was a certain thing. So I'm guessing this person who is asking this very specific question would know how to find that sort of patent and be able to read through it, right?
Probably. If not, I think on our website somewhere there is a link to the patent. I'm sure you can also just Google it, and you know, Eventide structural, I think it's transient stable separation. I might be butchering that, but yeah, that's the patent you'd look for. I think we might have also had a few DAFX papers. At the Digital Audio Effects Conference happens every year. There might have been a paper we published for that. So there's definitely resources out there to read up on this if you want to go digging, for sure.
Nice. Yeah, we're trying to get Dan involved with one of these dev streams. He's a very busy man. But everybody who knows him in the chat, we are working on it, and it should be coming soon with Dan and Newfangled.
Awesome. Yeah, Dan's great. I have huge respect for Dan. I mean, he was the head plugin guy when I started, so I kind of like, you know, he definitely helped me get started and like took me under his wing and all that. So, nice. And he's just one of the smartest and most genuine dudes I know. So like, if you can have him on, definitely do it. That'll be great.
Nice. All right, so I think if you want to bring up Physion and talk about that's the newest plugin in the Eventide range, correct?
Yes, it is. As the Mark II implies, we had a Physion that came out in 2017. Wasn't super successful, and we kind of misfired on a few things. So I think we really wanted to like do it again to kind of bring it in line with the updated. You know, we improved the split between Physion 1 and SplitEQ quite a bit, and we wanted to integrate that. We obviously wanted a new UI that was resizable and more in line with SplitEQ. We also had been playing around with this reverse delay effect for quite a while and thought that was really cool. We wanted to include that. We have there's a new pitch shift mode in here, which this poly mode, this is like the first Eventide product that has this in it. It's like a low latency polyphonic pitch tracker and shifter. This is future products are going to use this, and the low latency bit doesn't really help much in the case of Fission, where the split is causing a lot of latency anyways. But I just want to call this out as something that's new and powerful. Oh, you want this on the left, yeah. So yeah, anyways, Fission, like I was saying before, was it's effects instead of EQ, and it also has some super powerful applications that are not necessarily so creative. I want to touch a little more on the utility today, just since I think it's easy to go through the presets and just like lose yourself in all kinds of sound designy creative spaces. The presets, there's like 500 in here that have all been curated and categorized for like mixing, but also there's a whole produce category, with all kinds of exciting like unique things. So yeah, I think the example I want to show first is one thing that I think Fission does super well that's really powerful is retuning drums. So if you have like a tom or a kick that is maybe like, it's a sample you have that's not in the key of the song or just not mixing, is like, you might want to repitch it. But when you repitch a sample, you're usually like the attack, especially on a drum, it just gets completely smeared and just kind of, or it sounds like metallic-y if you're pitching up or whatever, right? So naturally it's like, oh, well, if we can just pitch the tonal part of the drum, it might sound a lot more transparent, right? So
I just want to point out, Tom, that I have completed a video on Physion 2. And
okay.
It's exactly this. So I just want to I want to flag that here before I release it, and everybody just says I'm using your idea. I did it all on my own.
Okay.
It's a really cool feature of the plugin, and I really like the multiple voice option as well. But I mean, I'll let you demonstrate, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I have other examples too. If you want me to move on.
No. Do it. Come on.
Okay, sure. I just, I also don't want to cover, I don't want to be repetitive if everyone's going to then go watch your video too. So
no. That will help. That will help.
All right,
Repetitive
cool.
is good.
I'll very quickly do it. So So with Fission, similarly to SplitEQ, right? We want to set up that split. So easiest way to do that: bypass transient and tonal effects, solo the transient or the tonal. Those solos are over here. Set our source type. We're going to be tom in this case. And then go ahead and just isolate that initial smack, that initial attack of the drum from the kind of resonating body of it. So here we go. All right, well, here's the full drum. All right, now I'm going to isolate. All right, so we've kind of got that initial smack and the kind of like plasticky like head sound almost like isolated from the tonal, right? So if I just put in the pitch section here, get mixed all the way up, we'll have it on mono since we're using a mono source. I can just go ahead and pitch the body of this tom up and down. So I'm retuning that tom without affecting, or smearing that attack, right? So I could just go ahead and show what it sounds like if I were to pitch shift the whole signal, so we can get kind of a A/B compare and contrast. This focus slider in the middle, it's a little different from SplitEQ. These three parameters over here are the same, but the focus slider, it is still about separation, but what we're doing is basically biasing the split algorithm to favor regions of the signal as being transient or being tonal. So that might be, so basically, if it's in the middle, it's kind of unbiased. And as I push towards transient or tonal, it starts biasing more of the signal to be classified as transient. So if I go all the way tonal, it just considers the entire signal to be tonal now. So that's handy if you do want to run just one effect out of here that you really like on your whole signal, you can do that. So here's if I were to shift the entire signal, right? you can hear it just kind of flubs out at those low frequencies, or it's metallic-y at the when I shift up, right? Whereas if I separate, it's a lot less of an issue. So yeah, that trick works great on toms, works great on kicks, even snares, you know. Also, if you have like a ringy snare or a snare where you want less body, like rebalancing just the transient and the tonal is super powerful. Another cool thing is like performers, like drummers, right, or really any kind of performer, any musician, if they're trying to like change the timbre changes of the instrument when they change like how hard they're playing it, right? And a lot of that is like more transient or less transient information. So if I wanted to make it sound like the drummer was hitting like especially hard, you know, I could actually just turn up the transient and turn down the tonal a bit. You know, bring back the gain on that. It sounds like they're hitting it harder than if I were to do the reverse, right? Like that sounds like they're hitting it a little softer. So you can kind of actually also play with the like timbre of the instrument as well, just with simple level changes, or obviously in SplitEQ, you could be like, you know, just doing that at certain frequencies. So it's a very powerful tool for like doing timbral changes as well.
I would also say that, like in my example on the video that I made, like I'm repitching bongos that are sat in a full drum loop. Like,
yeah,
that's how crazy cool this plugin can be when you get in and start using it that way. It doesn't have to be just a you know, what you have here, a completely isolated one. It can really do that on a number of things inside of like a full drum mix. It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. And like I said, we're just like continuously surprised, and especially seeing how people out there are using it. It's really, really cool. So yeah, I guess I'll go ahead and just show like one last example maybe.
All right.
Which is sorry?
I said, yeah, okay.
Oh, okay, cool. I thought you had a question ready or something. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and show reverb here on the on the tonal bit. You know, we do get a number of questions that are like, why aren't the effects the same between transient and tonal, or why am I limited to these effects? Why can't I choose multiple effects, et cetera, et cetera? We did all kinds of like, we tried all kinds of stuff on transient and tonal, right? And we kind of tailored these effects to things that work well on transient or on tonal. Like obviously a tremolo on your transient, probably not going to work super well. Stuff like that. And additionally, we actually tuned we tuned each of these effects to work well with transient or tonal material. So this transient reverb in here is different than this tonal reverb. These are not the same reverb effect. They're tuned totally differently under the hood. The transient reverb favors like a high modal density. So it's a lot lusher and denser because we're not expecting like all kinds of tonal pitched material into it. Whereas the tonal reverb has a high echo density because we're not expecting a bunch of like sharp attacks into it, right? So like they actually work well on those different kinds of signals. So what can be cool with that is if you have like the example I'm going to show here is a guitar performance that's like tapping, right? Like a tapped acoustic guitar, and those taps are pretty sharp. So if I were just to run that through a regular reverb, those taps would enter the reverb and then just kind of like splatter and smear everywhere. And if we remove those beforehand, you can get a much smoother reverb, right? So go ahead and play this dry so we can hear what it sounds like. All right, so now I'll go ahead and set up the split real fast.
While he's setting up the split there, chat, we are running a poll right now, and whatever wins in the poll, I'm going to give away an extra copy of that at the end of the stream. So it behooves you to vote because it will double your chances of winning a copy of that. And of course, if you didn't know and you're new here, we do giveaways on these, and all you need to do is be active and lovely and a great person and positive in the chat, and you'll be entered to win. And with this poll that we're running, if whichever one wins, I'm going to give away 2 of those as opposed to 1. So behooves you to go ahead and vote. But with that, continue, Tom. I do apologize.
All good. Everyone should go vote, sounds like.
Yes.
All right, cool. Let me just make sure this is set up real fast. All right, so I've got all those taps in that transient channel. I also just want to point out, with no effects, there's a kind of a cool, you're kind of hearing it here, there's a cool auto-bowing effect if you just crank transient decay and solo tonal. Like, for instance, I'll just exaggerate this. You know, it's like a guitar, but it's not being strummed, right? So there's kind of a cool sound designy thing there that you can play with. Anyways, go back to where we were. Turn on this reverb. Right, so you've got that reverb, but there's none of that like clattering tapping going in, where I'll go ahead and just push it all the way tonal, so we hear the full signal through. So you hear that like tapping fluttering around in the early early reflections of the reverb, right? So you can get really kind of clean, just, you know, lusher, more transparent reverbs that way. And inversely, you know, you could do stuff on the transient if you have like a drum loop and you want to just get like a lighter reverb that's not like getting filled with all the body of the drum and such. It works great there. So, yeah, I mean, I could keep going all day with these examples, but you know, I figure at a certain point, people probably just want to download the demo and try it out. You know, there's tons of effects buried in Physion here. You know, all of these do cool things. Like I said, there's a million presets in here. My colleague Colin spent a ton of time just like living with this thing and making presets and like trying to solve problems he always runs into. And same with SplitEQ, actually. Both of these plugins have the presets are, you know, I know people don't like to use presets, but
I do.
I think, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I know there's like an attitude towards presets, but even if you don't end up using them, these are just like great guides, I find, for, you know, what do I use this thing for, right? Like, I realize these plugins, like the concept is a little bit esoteric. It's not super obvious. Like, it's not just like, oh, let me slap on a reverb and we're set, right? It's like, they're a little bit hard to wrap your head around, right? And I think the presets are great for just like, you know, trying these out and see like, okay, what are the possibilities? Like, obviously all kinds of, you know, plosive reduction on vocals, or like modifying drums in certain ways, or, you know, there's even stuff for like widening using that panning section. You know, if it's like, hey, I want my mono piano track to be more spatialized, like I actually had a stereo recording of a piano where like low frequencies are going to be on one side and high on the other. Like, you can do a lot of cool stuff with it.
Dude, Tom, you know what the issue is here with these? It's bad marketing. We call them presets, and I think if we just call them starting positions, we get rid of so much of the negative energy that it's spewed out online about them. It's just like, hey, yeah, you know, I got rid of some, I de-S this vocal with this setting. So if you've got a vocal, the S might be in a different frequency position, but you're pretty close. Just tone it into what you're doing. I mean, presets, man. I love presets, especially for.
I do too.
Yeah, I got to work so fast. And in the end, like if I use a preset to de-ess a vocal, for instance, nobody is going to be like, oh, he used that preset from that plugin on that vocal to de. Nobody. It's going to get the job done.
Yeah.
I didn't have to redo it. Why reinvent the wheel in that case? And then on the creative, I'm going off on a tangent. I do apologize, but like
No, go for it.
On the creative front, like synth stuff, I've learned so much about synthesis by reverse engineering presets. If I found one that I liked, just literally opening up that same instrument on the init, the initial patch, and just trying to get to that position, you learn so much along the way. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to calm down. I'm out of line. I'm out of line here, and I do apologize.
I'm right there with you. I mean, like I was just saying, we use presets as like they're a great starting point. Like, why? Yeah, like get your work. Like it's just a faster workflow, right? And we take like great care to get the presets like dialed in, and categorized in a way that you can find them quickly, and they like speed up your workflow, right?
And there's nothing wrong with benefiting from the knowledge of someone else if they've been, nice enough to include their, incredibly sound design patch in Serum or a really, useful technique for mixing and mastering in SplitEQ. Use that to your advantage. Use every tool you have and don't let online people sway you in either direction.
Yep.
That would be my one piece of useful advice for this stream. We are running a poll right now. There's 117 votes. I would really like to see a little bit more votes. Remember, whichever one of those two plugins win, I'm going to give away 2 copies of it. So if that's the one you like, that's the one you might win. And with that, are you good? Is there more to show? I mean, we're coming up on 6:30.
I think this is a good time to go ahead and wrap the examples. So if there's questions or whatnot that you want to go through, I think the ball's in your court for what we do now. So,
I could tell a joke. I can't.
The ball's not in your court.
Yeah. No. There really aren't any more questions that have been fed to me. I think we got through them. I mean, you went through a lot, Tom. I really do appreciate how much you went through today. It's not easy demoing one product, never mind how many you went through. So thank you very much for taking the time and putting together such a robust showcase for us here.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it. This was fun.
All right. Johan or Elliot, those are my colleagues helping me on chat. Go ahead and stop the poll and let's see who won. In the meantime, we're going to do some giveaways here. I've got, let me just see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4 plugins plus an additional plugin, depending on who won the poll there to give away right now. The way we do this, Tom, is I've been given a list of random names of people who've been positive and active in the chat. And now I ask you to give me your favorite number between 1 and... between 1 and 20.
Go with 13.
Okay. Let me just... I got to pull up a notepad here so I do this right. I need 4 more numbers.
4 more numbers.
Yep.
Okay. 2.
Yeah, great number.
17.
Ooh, that's a unique one.
I
love how much time you're dedicating to actually
9 and let's go ahead and say 20. I don't know. Was that 4 more?
Yeah, that is it. Those are 5 numbers there. And the results of the poll, we got 127 votes. The poll was, which would you rather have, Tom? And it was between SplitEQ and Physion 2. And the results are in. 127 people voted, and it's 55% swung towards SplitEQ.
All right.
And another thing, on my video for Physion, I was calling it Physion in the first take because I was reading it as like physiotherapy.
Yeah.
And a colleague of mine was like, no, you're doing it. And so I had to redo the video. That's why it hasn't been published yet. That's my mistake.
Yeah. there's a long backstory on that. Let's just say it used to be spelled how you would think like nuclear fission would be spelled, and
Right.
you know, lawyers exist in this world. So
Yeah,
yeah.
they sure do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
But I certainly can't fault anyone for mispronouncing it. So
9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's some new names in here. I love to see all the new names that are coming into these dev streams. This is fantastic. While I'm doing this, Tom, next time you do another release, by all means, get in touch because we'd love to have you again.
yeah, absolutely. This was great. Gonna be a while, but probably before the next one. So we
That's
got some
understandable.
heavy R&D to do, but yeah, for sure, we'll reach out.
Okay. Everybody, this is how we do these. I'm doing it live. Give me a break. That person won that, and then that person won the.
I mean, I guess I could take the moment of radio silence to say that Physion is not the most common mispronunciation we get. The most common one is Eventide. The amount of times I've heard Eventide instead of Eventide. So I guess I'll set the record straight and say it's Eventide.
It is even. I mean, that's what I've been saying. I thought for a second I was like, "What did I say in the beginning of this?" All right, so
no, not you specifically, but just in general, you know.
All right, well, I've got 5 winners of 5 plugins from Eventide.
Oh no!
No, we can't do that. All right, so congratulations to the following people: Remy Music, you are the winner of H910 or H910, H910. How do you pronounce that one?
H910.
H910. Remy Music, congratulations. H910 is yours. Dance Fix, you are the proud owner of Blackhole. Kimchi Bagels, wonderful, wonderful name. You win a copy of SplitEQ. Music 7 Studios, Physion Mk II is yours. Congratulations. And the extra winner of the SplitEQ, because the SplitEQ won the poll, is Love Derek. We all love Derek. Who doesn't like Derek? If your name was called, you are a winner. Go ahead and email support@PluginBoutique with what you won and a screenshot of you logged into your account with the username I've just called. So we know it's you. We know who to give the devices to. But congratulations. And thanks a lot to you, Tom, for coming through. Thanks a lot to Eventide for, doing this with us and providing these wonderful VSTs to give away on stream. Thanks to Johan
Absolutely.
and Elliot for helping me man the chat. And thanks to all of you who came through and watched. Just a quick reminder, tomorrow, Moog, big giveaways happening. Lots of great... The person who ran the show there making those new plugins will be here with us. And then remember, super special stream next Thursday at 8 p.m. On the channel. So definitely come through, hit the bell so you get notifications when we make these posts and do these again. But Tom, thanks again. I will let you go. I know you're a busy man. You got more plugins to make. And just hit me up. The invite is open. Let me know when you want to do it again, yeah?
Yeah, sounds great. This was actually really fun. So, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, Joshua.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
Take it easy.
Ragamuffin keeps striving in every way. International, what they call we international. When me ride palm rhythm in the move, but the rhythm when I come down crucial. And me ride palm rhythm and then we sit down steady. Body me on the place, I with the one Jamal skinny. sit up on the rhythm and I open the mic incredible. I'm a right part rhythm and I move with the rhythm, I sit down steady. Every ragamuffin you do, I feel rock and follow me. Cool, you know you love her for your life. Make me jump up on the rhythm, make me ride it right. Make me chat up on the mic and keep it international. Cause anytime we chop a mic, they call we give it a general. International, what they call we international.